Wheat will turn on your hunger. I went to the restaurant the other day and I asked how many ounces of protein is on this salad. It was like a gluten-free buffalo chicken salad. It had
Mhm.
4 ounces of chicken. I said, well, that's not enough and I don't want to eat that, so just give me the burger. You want to get 30 grams of protein. As women, we want to be strong. We want to build muscle. But if we're not going to nourish our body, you're not going to have good bones. So protein will give us better skin, better hair, better nails, and help us build muscle, help us have stronger bones. So
Yeah.
we want to look at how protein can help us and how we can get more protein, and then let the bread fill in the edges. But don't start with bread as the meal.
Today we welcome to the show Lori Ballou. Lori, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat all things midlife, menopause, women over 50 specifically. But you know what? Catching up to that in our 40s, because it starts there when we need to balance our metabolism, balance our blood sugar, get our adrenals functioning. I mean, if I had known what I know now back in my mid 30s, I wouldn't have been so messed up and I would have been able to enjoy life more. I lost my 30s and 40s to obesity, depression, anxiety, and asthma, PCOS, and all the things. And it wrecked my marriage. I never lived the way I could have loved to live. And that breaks my heart that people don't get this information. And I was even told recently that we can't discuss a certain thing on YouTube because, they're blocking it. So it's like, and I'm afraid to even bring it up now, but it's just like
Right.
women who are hungry and having problems with hunger and, really trying to figure out how to manage food. Basically, we're malnourished. We're not getting the nutrition we need, and that's the bare basic bottom problem is we're not
Mhm.
absorbing the food that we need to have the nourishment that we need in our body. And so we can't operate at full speed ahead. And because our food system tends to have too many chemicals and not enough nutrition, it just keeps us in a starvation mode. And if your body then if you're focused on a low calorie, low fat diet, then again, your digestion breaks down. You're no longer able to absorb your fat soluble vitamins. You may not even be eating fat soluble vitamins from your food. And that's again just like causing your body to be in a malnourished state, in a starvation state. And then all your cravings and hunger are turned on, and people end up having, problems with eating overall
Wow.
and not feeling
Wow.
satisfied. So I love a low carb diet, a keto diet, because it gave me my life back and I don't have to worry about hunger. I'm like, oh, I better eat. I'm like, oh my gosh,
So
it's like
interesting.
yesterday I tried to cook a hamburger patty. I did cook a hamburger patties, but I was making
Mhm.
keto cookies at the same time. And then my friend called me and then I'm like, I forgot to eat the hamburger. And then I had to jump on a call, which I thought would quick, and it took 2 hours and I didn't even eat dinner till 5 o'clock. And that was late for me.
Oh,
I
wow.
wasn't hungry, but I'm like, okay, you need to eat before going to yoga. So I mean, I
Yeah.
just needed to eat my protein.
Yeah, no, there's so much to unpack there. So, I mean, it sounds like you've been on your own health journey and that, having misinformation about health has really caused you to, in your own words, lose your 30s and 40s. And I was sharing with you in our pre chat that I also have struggled just finding ways to solve my own health concerns around Hashimoto's hypothyroiditis. And so I think that you're probably right. There are a lot of women out there that feel exhausted, that are experiencing some of the symptoms that perhaps, I don't know, what were your symptoms that you were experiencing, and what was it that was a catalyst to send you on this journey to find your own solutions?
Yeah, I had food sensitivities since I was a child. So I had depression and I gained weight to 200 pounds back when I was an adolescent. And
Wow.
my mom couldn't get any help from the medical system. So she just put me on the Atkins diet. And I got the 2-for-1 special at that point. And that's why I focus on a weight loss and diabetes solution, because not only did it cure or fix my depression, but I lost 50 pounds and reset my metabolism. And so
Wow.
that kept me stable through high school. And I wasn't completely like, obese. I was just 150. So, I mean, I fit in and I could,
Yeah.
it could have been a lot worse mentally for me. I was still a loner. I didn't know how to react with people because the fact that I had a lot of, I was embarrassed when I was overweight. I don't know if
Yeah.
everybody reacts that way, but it causes me to be more depressed and I get more anxiety. But I think a lot of that has to do with the food sensitivity. So I was sensitive to wheat, dairy, and that back then it was probably leaky gut. So then I had the brain issue, and they're discovering now that that does cause a problem with the brain. And so people who are reacting with depression or bipolar, they're calling it these days, or schizophrenia, part of that is because the gut's not working and you have leaky gut. And so then you end up with leaky brain, and then you just don't have energy for the body. So there's no brain energy. I didn't have brain energy. And so that was lacking most of my life. And I
Yeah.
even ended up with PCOS in my mid 30s, which is a pre diabetic state. I ended up
Okay.
with getting up to 225 pounds. I had asthma, allergies, and sinusitis all the time, bronchitis. I was always coughing up phlegm because I didn't know I had a
Mm,
sensitivity to dairy. It caused me so much phlegm. I did that for 20 plus years, just coughing up phlegm, getting immune therapy, trying to figure out asthma, trying to get allergy pills and everything, and being on an inhaler and a breathing machine for 25 years. All I
yeah.
did was go keto. I don't have any asthma. I don't use a breathing machine. I threw the breathing machine in the trash. I don't have any inhalers. I nothing. It was, and if, even looking back at at history, they say that asthma is an inflammatory condition. And so if we're eating too much sugar and eating food that's not right for our body in a pre-diabetic state, then we're going to have inflammation. And that's what I actually address and what I focus on because I'm an obesity survivor. My sister died at over 400 pounds with obesity.
Wow.
I helped my brother reverse his diabetes so that he could be healthy and, work on correcting other things he's got going on in his body. And yet my dad died from diabetes and heart disease, and he suffered his whole life from all of the metabolic syndrome. So it happens, but because we're not eating food that's right for our body, we're eating foods we're sensitive to that have chemicals, and we're not nourished. And it's
Mm,
not necessarily a fact that it's genetic. I mean, I do have that propensity to be obese, but then so many people do because we have 88% of the population is insulin resistant. We have an obesity epidemic. And it's not just because of our DNA, it's because of the food system. If
yeah.
we're adding too much sugar in and vegetable oil, so it's like this whole cascade of
Hmm.
problems that we're inundating our body with. And until you take out the basics, get your body back to nature, reset the metabolism, you really don't know how many carbohydrates you can tolerate, what your body can tolerate until you correct the blood
Mm.
sugar, the fatty liver, the fatty pancreas, pancreatic insufficiency. There's so many blocks that go on in the body that need to be addressed.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So, what I hear you saying is that you started off having some health concerns at a very young age, and that just was a cascading sort of spiral into other things like depression. Then you bounced back into obesity. It sounds like that you were struggling with a variety of other issues like asthma and some other health concerns. And so I just want to dive into some of that a little bit because you're saying all of this stems from your metabolism. And so you used a few words that I want to just make sure that we level set understanding with our audience. And that was, you had the phrase leaky gut. So tell us, what does leaky gut mean and what's the impact of leaky gut?
So leaky gut is permeability of your intestines. And what happens is we have a process that is called zonulin. There's an enzyme zonulin, and you could look at or think about it like a cheesecloth. It's supposed to be like a cheesecloth, and it's supposed to be able to sort things in and out of your body that need to be there, like nutrients. Or
Uh-huh.
if there's something happening in your blood and it needs to flush it out, it's going to open up and flush. And it's supposed to stay closed, but like a cheesecloth. So now just think of that cheesecloth has a big hole in it. All of a sudden you're getting like mud coming in that
I see.
cheesecloth. Like if it were coffee, like say coffee was coming in through the cheesecloth
Mhm.
and normally you could keep out the grains, but this is now all of a sudden everything's getting into your blood system and you're getting this toxic stream of parasites, bacteria, food particles that may not have been digested. And this causes a lot of systemic inflammation. There's a lot of inflammatory responses that are happening when that's going on. And that's happening in the brain too. So they call it not just leaky gut, but they call it leaky brain. And it's even in the
Okay.
mouth, leaky teeth or leaky gums. And so
Seriously.
this is that whole cardiovascular syndrome that is happening with people who are getting sick and thinking that the food, they think that maybe saturated fat and meat causes heart disease. But really,
Mhm.
if you look at all the inflammatory processes that are happening and what's going on in your blood because of what you're eating, the whole picture, then you can actually get to the underlying root cause, look for your hidden healing opportunities and find those weight loss blocks. And then we can put our body back together again. I like to say like Humpty Dumpty, we just patch up the
Yeah.
cracks. But you don't really, how many I mean, I didn't know about fatty pancreas till recently. I didn't understand that yeah, I've been seeing insulin, I mean, pancreatic insufficiency in my clients' lab works. And
Mhm.
then when they retake their labs, I'm seeing that it improves. But if you look up insufficient pancreatic insufficiency, it'll tell you you can't treat it, you can't cure it.
Mhm.
But
That
not
is
on the standard American diet, because if you have fatty liver, you're
mhm.
going to have fatty pancreas. But if you take your sugars down, and support your body in the beginning. Everybody needs this metabolic reset, not just people who are overweight, but everybody's having a problem because you could be what they call skinny on the outside and fat on the inside with too
Mhm.
much visceral fat. And so we want to maintain better health by resetting the metabolism and finding out where you need to go with this. And leaky gut is like 80% of the problem.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's something that Hippocrates said, thousands of years ago is 80% of your health starts in the gut.
That's
And that's why the
incredible.
brains are so messed up. They can't even treat the brain unless they treat you with diet. And that's what they're noticing with metabolic psychiatry these days. There's a
Mhm. Oh,
couple of really good psychiatrists out there using the keto diet. It's so empowering.
I
And
have
what,
heard something about
yeah,
that.
Dr. Palmer and George Ede, they're amazing. And what they're doing for metabolic psychiatry is flipping it upside down and saying, we cannot treat this. Medicine does not work, but diet is amazing. And it's the only thing that works. And that's what
Mhm.
saved me was getting on a keto diet for have brain energy. And then you can get joyful about life again and just,
Yeah, that's
figure out what the
awesome.
next action steps is, just treat
Yeah.
it like a health hobby and get to the main, just keep looking for your solution. That's what I call it, a weight loss and diabetes solution when I help my clients.
Yeah, I think that's so fascinating. And so I want to pull a thread of a phrase that I heard you say is get to the root cause, to understand how we can get to the root cause, because I recognize that leaky gut can be a significant part of all of the symptoms that we're experiencing in our bodies, from mental health disorders, it sounds like,
Mhm.
all the way down to things like asthma and,
Mhm.
joint and muscle pain and whatever
And
are the things that we're
autoimmunity too. I mean, it's huge for
autoimmunity.
autoimmunity. That's the biggest problem. MS is, all of the autoimmunity diseases they actually have bacteria in the GI map that I run a gut test and it shows autoimmunity bacteria. And so if they're inflamed and overpopulated, you're going to have more of an issue with autoimmunity. And then
Mm,
that was the problem too with the leaky gut is because when you're getting like let me take Hashimoto's for instance and wheat. So when you're eating wheat and you've got Hashimoto's, well, that wheat protein resembles the thyroid. And so when you have leaky gut and you're eating wheat, what can happen is that wheat gets into the body and your body starts attacking the thyroid if that's where it's going to go and attack. And so it doesn't know the difference. And so you could
that's
end up having that autoimmunity from leaky gut because you're eating foods that your body is then reacting to and trying to fight off. But then those particles will end up looking like or landing on certain areas, and your body's trying to protect you, but it doesn't know how to do it specifically.
So it sounds like there could be so many different sort of root causes. So how do
Right.
we identify for us? Because I recognize that, everybody's health is individualized. So how
Yes.
do, I or how does our listener get specifically down to the exact root cause issue that's really plaguing her body? And how does she then start to course
Yeah,
correct?
well, the biggest one, and the reason why I like a low carb diet is because it does take out a lot of the food sensitivities, which are the wheat and the grains and cereal grains that can be causing problems. So that one's a huge one. Now, a lot of people will still keep in dairy, but you could have food sensitivity. So I like to run a food sensitivity test, find
Mhm.
out what's going on in your body, what foods you're reacting to. And I react to blueberries, so it could be very
Oh,
individual. My brother reacted to strawberries. And so you want to
mhm.
take out the foods that you're reacting to in that moment for 3 to 6 months, depending on the severity. And then we focus on healing and sealing the gut and bringing in probiotics. And at the same time, managing digestion. But when I run 5 to 6 labs, I actually am looking for digestive dysfunction, malabsorption, and looking at protein and fat malabsorption, whether or not the bile acids working or not working, looking for that pancreatic, marker, what it's looking like. What are all the gut health markers looking like? Where is the inflammation? And then what I do is actually fix the basic metabolism
Mhm.
to unstop the body so that the liver's functioning, the kidneys are functioning, your pancreas functioning, and bringing in targeted supplementation to support minerals that are not there, and looking and getting your body to the point where it's going to start absorbing more nutrients. Like I had one client was saying 3 months in, all of a sudden she goes, yeah, my nails are stronger. I feel like I'm healing better. I feel like I'm things. And that was really good information for me to hear. What she was doing was working for her body. And also, what's interesting is the brain starts to come back really fast, and then you can
Yeah.
think and get yourself back because people don't realize that they're living in a state of inflammation, that there's pain and that there's brain fog because you wake up every day and you just assume it's normal and you just
Yeah.
put yourself in an adrenal state or a high cortisol state and
Mhm.
just push through it. I mean, we all do that. That's why when we hit 50, we're just exhausted. And, at that
Right.
point, your adrenals have to take over your hormones, and yet your adrenals might be burned out. And so that's why getting into 50 could be a problem because we're running on adrenaline and we've run our adrenals to the ground, and now we have to actually really we don't have any more choice. If you want to lose the weight and stay healthy, you have to figure out what's going on in your body and how to
Yeah.
support it.
No.
And so it's the metabolism. I mean, basically start with a metabolic reset. Get your blood sugar low. That's how I start my clients. We got to get on a low carb diet, lower your blood sugar,
Let's
lower
talk
the
a little bit
carbs.
about that, right? Because you mentioned Atkins diet when you were a teenager and that your mom put that on you. And I know that that was revelatory back in the day. People are like, what? I can eat bacon every day, all day long, every meal. Like, what exactly is a ketogenic diet or a low carb diet? Because I do think that there's misperceptions out there. You talk about specifically a holistic low carb diet.
Right.
So let's dive into that a little bit so our listener really understands what does that mean from a fundamental standpoint.
So it is a whole foods diet without ultra processed foods. And that's something that everybody wants to do anyway. Get to a whole foods diet, take out the unprocessed foods, the ultra processed foods.
And so,
If you
what is
look
an ultra processed food?
So all like a lot of the packaged foods that people are eating,
Does
and
that include my bacon?
bacon is a processed food in a way because they
Okay.
have to put it in a package. So we want to look at the ultra processed foods. So we
Okay.
want to take out the foods that are devoid of nutrients
Got it. Things that are
and have
not
a lot of
real that have been
sugar, that have the
manufactured.
sugar, the wheat, and the vegetable oils. Those are the ultra processed foods with all the
Okay.
chemicals. When you take those out, then you're going to be in a better state to actually work on the next level. And, you could do a paleo diet. That's where I started. If you have a lot of dysfunction, it may not be low enough carbs. You could get your carbs under 100 to start. That's a low carb diet. And
Okay.
if you just go down to fruit, that could be simple and it doesn't feel hard. So when you just start eating more whole food, keep your fruit in, have some nuts, seeds, olives. It's not like you're not eating. You're actually going to be nourishing your body and have more
Mhm.
food to eat. That would be more of a low carb diet. And
So let
then
me ask you this
go
when
ahead.
you talk about carbs, and I'm just hearing you talk about fruit, I think about fruit having a lot of carbs, for
It does.
example. So what kind of carbs are you talking about? Is there a differentiation between, there's all kinds of I can't even think of like net carbs and what are you talking about
No,
here? Just
that's a good
counting
thank you
carbs.
for asking that question because, I live the lifestyle and I just like, I know what carbs to limit and that, you're obviously thinking, okay, well, which carbs are the ones that need to be watched? It's whatever carbohydrates are going to keep your carbs too high. And so let's look at it, break that down. So like if you're going to have beans and cereal grains and wheat and potatoes, you might be having 50 grams of carbohydrates with that one item.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
if you're having several of those items a day and your carbohydrates are up over 300 grams a day, you're
Right.
going to be in an inflammatory state. And
Okay.
so to get out of an inflammatory state and to have better health, you want your carbs to go under 100. And so at that point, you want to look at having the lowest carbs, like the vegetables, minimizing the fruit, not having the super sugary fruits like
Got it.
mango and pineapple, and
Mhm.
not having the juices. So not drinking your carbohydrates that are going to
Okay.
raise your blood sugar
Like
is a
orange juice, for
like a big one,
example.
right? Juice will raise if you want vitamin C, that's actually not the right way to get vitamin C
Mm.
into the body because sugar will block vitamin C from getting into the cells. So you actually want your vitamin C without sugar for it to actually function in your body. And so that's something people don't are not aware of. Drinking juice is just going to make you have prediabetes. So basically the carbs that you want to get down to are vegetables. Maybe even a little bit of sweet potato, but not a lot, and tracking your carbs. You want to
Uh-huh.
get your blood
So
sugar
CGM is what?
constant glucose monitor.
Got it.
They're easier to get these days, and you can see what your body is doing, how it's reacting to food. I like to run a food sensitivity test to take the inflammatory foods out
Mhm.
of your body and then also lower your blood sugar to at least 50, your carbohydrates under 50 so that we could lower your blood sugar more readily. And so when I say lower your carbohydrates, it's basically lowering the glucose load on your body. Get your blood sugar levels lower so you could actually have better brain energy and actually start to lose the weight. If you are stabilized, you're feeling better, but you're not losing weight, then at the very first part of doing this, get your carbs lower, get control of getting off of the ultra processed foods
Mhm.
and eat whole foods. We can't get away from packaged foods because coconut butter comes in a jar, our bacon comes in a package,
Right.
our beef comes in a package. We have to go to the store to get our food.
Sure.
We don't, unless you're living on a farm, it's gonna, those things are still what we need to do, but we want to keep our food whole. We want to eat food that our grandparents would have recognized, 50 years ago.
Mhm.
And they even knew back then. And if you study the book Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes, he goes into all the history of it. And even up into the 1950s, they would say, we need to keep the carbs low. That bread's going to raise your blood sugar levels and make you fat. And so they knew all of that. But then everybody started getting afraid of fat in the diet causing heart disease because
Mm.
heart disease was becoming more of a problem. But back in 1900s, heart disease wasn't even an issue, and there were no cardiologists, not a single
So why do
cardiologist.
we make that conclusion, right
Yeah,
off
so
the
if you
bat?
look at the food back in 1900, which they were just eating your meat, your vegetables, and they didn't even have very much fruit. They had some sugar, but they didn't have vegetable oils. They ate their pig lard, their pig fat, their meat fat.
Mm.
They eat their whole chicken and everything in it, but people weren't getting heart disease from eating
Yeah.
real food. So that's where we want to look. So that's when I say low carb. I mean, get your glucose lower, bring
Mhm.
in whole food, and take out the foods that are causing too much of a glucose load on your body. And so you do
Got it.
need to kind of calculate it. There's a lot of apps out there
Mhm.
that will show you how many carbs
Yeah.
you're eating.
Yeah, no, I use one that's called Carb Manager, and so
Yes,
just
that's
to
the one
kind
I'm
of
using.
oh,
Yeah.
good, I like that one too
Yeah.
because it does track,
Mm.
kinds of like the net carbs versus the carbs and things like that, and I really try and keep my net carbs low, which have low impact, a low glycemic impact on your
Right.
body. But what I hear you saying is like we can start with our diet. You said initially if you can just get below 100 or 200 carbs, really, I think you said 100
Yeah,
is
100 would be best. Right.
yeah, is an ideal starting point. And then if you
Mhm.
can ultimately lower that down to below 50, then that would be even better. And the way that you can do that is by minimizing those ultra processed foods, the foods that are really not organic, that have been processed in a lab, that have been created,
Right.
over packaged, too many ingredients on the box. If you
Yeah, if you
can't,
can't even read the ingredients, don't eat it.
yeah,
You're not nourished. If you're focused on all those tasty foods because that they've been created to be tasty, they hijack your taste buds and they hijack your hunger and make hunger
right.
turn on more and you'll overeat because of that. But the problem is when we're eating those, we're not getting the protein, we're not getting the fat, we can't absorb our nutrients. And so
Yeah.
to be able to do those three things, we have to take away the things that are causing that to be blocked.
Yeah.
That's blocking our nutrition.
No, I totally hear what you're saying. And so it's about, getting rid of that ultra processed food, and it's about putting more emphasis on the proteins that you've said and the vegetables. You said even fruits are okay, but keep those to a minimum if you're really trying to get below that 50 carbs per day type of
Right.
threshold. You also said things about minimizing wheat and gluten, minimizing processed sugars. So those things all need to go out of our diet. So I know our listener is sitting out there going, then what in the freaking world can I possibly eat? Because if you're going to ask me to just eat vegetables and meat all the time, I know our listener is like, I don't know if I can do that. And I think that's what intimidates so many people, Lori,
Yeah.
about the keto diet is that people feel like it's almost impossible to do. But I
And
know you've
that's
been able to
why
master it. So help us
Yeah.
figure out how
Yes.
to
So
do
this is
that.
how you do it. You use my food bridge process. I'm coming up with this concept. I really don't know if anybody else is using it, but I'm using this food bridge concept. I've put it in my new recipe book that's out there at my website. And basically, if whatever you want to eat and you love all those flavors, make it low carb and just go low carb. So just cross the bridge over from the ultra processed food into low carb. And if you want a pizza, just find a pizza crust that's low carb or keto. Make you make it yourself. You could do a pizza. You can get like ground beef or ground chicken and you can make a crust out of that.
I did that
I've even got a
earlier.
recipe where you take some bacon fat and some chicken and you just cook it up in a skillet and you add egg white on top of that and it can make a crust and you just make it into a pizza. I mean, those things are fully satisfying and you
Mhm.
don't even realize that you're starving until you start taking out the processed food and bringing in the nutrition. So what you want to do is just get excited to have a healthier, more beautiful body and a
Mhm.
better brain that's not going to have Alzheimer's or depression in 10 to 20 years. Think about what your ultimate goal is for your life. Do you want to create 10 to 20 more years of life? A lot of the times we think about food and we start to panic. And that you panic because your body is designed to seek out food for survival and to
Mhm.
make sure that you eat. And so you do have a hormonal process to tell you to go eat that food. So as long as your sugar switch is flipped on, you will be hormonally in a mode to search out food. You'll get in the car and drive to go get that donut and that ice cream. However, if you eat the fat and the protein and you eat everything low carb, you don't have that desire to go out and search for those foods because you flip that switch off. And so following the food bridge process, crossing over, if whatever you want to make it low carb. You don't have to be on a keto diet until
Mhm.
you're ready. So you want to start low carb so that you
Mhm.
don't feel overwhelmed, you don't feel stressed, your body's not going to panic. And I mean, my cookbook has a pumpkin pie. I just made a pumpkin pie with pralines on top, with
Oh my
pecans that are candied. So instead of making two pies, I just kind of make one. I just made snickerdoodle cookies and threw in some pecans and put the extra pralines on top of that. And they came out amazing. I made fudge and brownie. I mean, I don't eat this way all the time. I eat mostly keto, and some days I forget to have a vegetable, but
Mhm.
I like to be able to have those on holidays. And that's how I made my low carb process work for me. I'm a
Mhm.
baker. When I went keto, I made everything low carb. I just followed the food rules. My food rule was it has to be low carb, it has to be keto, it has to be fat and protein, and it has to be aligned with a low carbohydrate diet. And as long as my carbs were low and I could lose weight and feel great, then I felt like I was on the right road for myself. So I got my brain energy back. I dropped 20 pounds. My eyes were wonky and I didn't even know it. So my eye vision was better. My hair started growing back in and life was better than it had ever been before. So for me and anybody suffering depression, this is the only way to get out of depression. It has nothing to do with medications. To not have depression, you'll have to actually fix your gut, eat the
Mhm.
right foods to nourish your body so that your brain can function with the right amount of fat and ketones for the brain.
Yeah, no, I think that that's such an important message. And thank you for sharing the food bridge idea. I think that that is a brilliant idea. And I love the idea too, ladies. There is so much information out there on the internet. Do not get discouraged by
No,
trying,
never.
never give up. Don't feel like you have to do it all at once. Use this bridge, try little things at a time, try and make things ketogenic. You can trust me, ladies, go to Pinterest. There's 1,000 recipes, 100,000 recipes out there in the universe that at your
Well,
fingertips
there's
in ways
so
that you
many.
can
There's
make
so
things
many
low
create. The
carb.
human brain is so creative.
Right.
There is so many recipes out there. You never have to be hungry. You don't ever have to worry about eating something that you want to eat. I mean, my favorite breakfast right now is either a can of tuna or a can of salmon mixed with mayonnaise, and I'm eating it with pork rinds, and it's just like, oh, I really like this for breakfast.
Yeah, no, I make pork rind fried chicken where I just put the pork rinds into a food processor so it turns into like a breadcrumb sort of
Right,
consistency.
right.
Then you just dredge your chicken through an egg wash and then you coat it with the pork rinds and put it in the air fryer. And so I love this idea. And I think the more that we talk through some of these recipes, like the chicken crust pizza, which I made earlier this week for my
Oh my
kids, and my
gosh, I
daughter
love the
came
cheese
college.
pizza. It's
I
so
think it's so
good.
good. And I don't think I can tell the difference totally. But my daughter came home from college this week and she had some of this pizza. And she was like, what is this made of? Kids, before you launch into the keto diet. But I just think that that's so important to just try little things at a time. Don't get discouraged and really
Right.
know that there are so many recipes out there that you can have the food. What I hear you saying is you can have the food you love, find a way to make it ketogenic. And if you're
Right.
like me, Laura, you had to work around, you had to, trial and error that a little bit because, the first time I tried the chicken crust pizza, not so good. So, or the first time I tried to make cookies with like an almond flour or something like
Mhm.
that, it was different. It's
Yeah,
different.
I have an amazing cookie recipe that uses almond flour. It's in my recipe book, and I just love it. And I just turned it into a snickerdoodle by just taking out the chocolate chips and dipping it in cinnamon. I mean, it's amazing. And then
I
you can
think
make
that's
it into a praline by putting pecans in it. So it's so many. You could do whatever you want to do. I even make Irish soda bread low carb. So that's so exciting.
Oh, wow. That is exciting. I think
Yeah.
so. Tell us about that because if I think about, I'm thinking about bread here because, I think about things like
And
a
that's the biggest problem
sourdough,
most
like,
people have.
yes.
They want to eat the bread. Bread makes you feel comfortable, but the thing is, you need knowledge. What the bread's doing to your brain is it's creating gluteomorphine into your brain. You are addicted to gluten.
Okay.
Gluten gets into the brain and makes you feel good. It gives you a dopamine hit, but at the same time, it causes that leaky gut and autoimmunity problem in your body, and it can cause the leaky brain. And then if you have any kind of gingivitis or periodontitis, it's also causing leaky gums. And so you
Mhm.
want to look at the whole body picture of what wheat could be doing to you. And so,
Mhm.
yes, it tastes good, but how can we get something similar, follow that food bridge process, and
Mhm.
make our own bread so that we can be comfortable that like we still have control of what we're doing. We're still eating food that makes us feel good, and we don't have to feel so overwhelmed in a panic. And so
Mhm.
there's so many recipes. There's two good companies out on the market called Unbun, Unbun, and then Base Culture. Those two are pretty good. I would stay away from any of the cheap grocery store brands.
Mhm.
These other two, you're
Okay.
going to have to go to a Whole Food store to find them. That anything that has wheat gluten in it's still going to
Mhm.
keep gluten in your diet, keep you having leaky gut. And the other thing it does is it turns on your hunger. Wheat will turn on your hunger.
Okay.
And so if you're eating wheat and you're trying to fill up on all the tortillas and having tortillas and bread and all that and trying to fill up on that. Well, I mean, I went to the restaurant the other day and I asked how many ounces of protein is on this salad. So it was said it was like a gluten-free buffalo chicken salad. It had
Mhm.
4 ounces of chicken. I said, well, that's not enough and I don't want to eat that. So just give me the burger.
Right?
And so
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. Is like you want to get 30 grams of protein. As women, we want to be strong. We want to build muscle. But if we're not going to nourish our body, you're not going to have good bones. You're going to have flabbier skin because you're not getting the
Mm.
muscle built up. And so protein will give us better skin, better hair, better nails, and help us build muscle, help us have stronger bones. And yet it's also going to give us better brain health. And so
Yeah.
we want to look at how protein can help us and how we can get more protein and then let the bread fill in the edges. And you might
Mhm.
eat your protein and be full and you don't even want bread, but don't start with bread as the meal.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a simple recipe with just tahini butter. You take a cup of tahini butter, 4 eggs, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and a teaspoon of baking soda. You whip all that up and you put it in a little a little bread pan, glass bread
Mhm.
pan with some parchment paper, and just you have bread. And you slice that and you could put
Here.
whatever you like on your bread.
Oh
It's
my
so
gosh.
simple.
It's so funny that you say that because I've literally just cut bread out of my life. I haven't had bread, I don't
Yeah,
know,
and you can make it
in
from egg white.
years.
I mean, follow Maria Emmerich. She's making amazing things from egg white. I mean, I'm probably going to make her. I made them last year or 2 years ago. She has eclair chocolate donuts made of egg white, and then you could whip up some custard with some dairy or coconut milk and sweeten it with allulose. And then if you use allulose, that actually creates a GLP-1 activation, turns off your appetite, so you could eat these things, get the protein, and actually not have any cravings afterwards so that you could
Wow.
stop eating instead of inhaling everything if you've got food cravings.
So
So
what is
it's
I'm not even familiar
allulose
with that.
is kind of like erythritol and monk fruit. It's a little bit different.
Okay.
They calling it a rare sugar. They're still making it from corn because that's just the substrate that they're making it from. So if you have a corn allergy, you'll just have to balance to see how
Mhm.
you react to it. But it is a natural sugar alternative that doesn't raise your blood sugar. It doesn't raise blood sugar when they've checked with CGMs. So people have noticed it. I don't get an insulin rise in my body. I don't feel hungry after I've eaten it. And I actually feel like it turns off my appetite. I don't feel like I need to overeat a
Mhm.
cookie. And
Yeah.
when I say cookie and when I'm eating, it's keto cookie. I don't
Right.
ever stray. I just follow my food rules. And if I want something, I'm gonna follow that food bridge process and eat low carb and enjoy it for a while. But for the most part, my personal rule is 30 grams of protein and getting some fat. And then I add in a treat if I want to, or I add in the fermented vegetables. But right now, it is my baking season. I'm trying to educate and teach people that you can do these things. But yet, come January, I'm going to be mostly protein. And how can I build more muscle and get stronger is what my focus is going to be in my 60s.
Yeah. So you're saying keep the carbs below 50, minimal, ladies. Listen to this 30 grams of protein, but I've even heard as much as 1 gram of protein per pound of body
Right.
weight. Is
So
that
there's a lot of hacks with that. And a lot of the times we're doing intermittent fasting. And so we still want to make sure that we are absorbing the protein we're eating. And you need to get 30 grams to actually be able to get into muscle synthesis. And so if we're
at one
not,
in one sitting?
you're in one sitting. Otherwise, you're wasting your protein. you're not even going to absorb it. You know, very little of that's going to be absorbed and be used because if you don't have all the amino acids you need to actually build things in your body, it can't store the amino acids, so it just dumps them. So if you don't get enough, you just don't utilize them as readily. And that's part of the problem of people having a health problems, heart problems. A lot of people who try to exercise or marathoners who are eating low fat, low protein, they're damaging their heart because they don't have the amino acids to protect their heart.
Okay.
So there's so
Wow.
many things that our body needs to do with protein. So yeah, if you can get 100 grams of protein a day at 3 meals or 2 meals of 50 grams of protein and use the digestive enzyme to help you break it down, because that's the other side of it. Are you absorbing your protein that you're eating?
Yeah, let's talk about that because you had mentioned that as being a pretty significant issue. Why are we not absorbing our nutrients? What's
Because
happening?
we've been dieting our whole life and we have low stomach acid. We have gallbladders that are stagnant and not working. We have cholestasis, which is the gallbladder's just not working. You could have low bile acid. When we eat low calorie, low fat, what happens is your digestive system stops working. Your body is not stupid. It's like, oh, we're not utilizing this. We don't need it. Let's stop using it. So you're going to have lower stomach acid. You're not able to break down your minerals, and you can end up with GERD. A lot of people end up with GERD. And
What's GERD?
basically, GERD is when you have low stomach acid and you have symptoms of stomach acid that's coming up and
Like acid
burning. So it
reflux?
feels like you have high acid, but basically it's low acid because
Mm,
your stomach sphincter is not opening and letting food out.
wow.
And so we need to increase stomach acidity. And those are some of the things that I test for. And, you know, the biggest problem is if we cannot function with brain energy, you can't get to the next level of lifestyle change because you're just exhausted.
Yeah, no, and that's your whole premise. I think your tagline is live adventurously. So what does
Yes.
that mean to you and how have these dietary changes like transformed your life?
So once you start a good diet and you're able to then get the nourishment that you need in your body, you can, again, the brain energy comes back in, you get more excited about life and you become more active. You have more energy to be more active.
Mhm.
And at that point, you start doing more exercising. You start wanting to be outside and getting movement. And so what I started doing was became a hiker, a half marathoner. I just kept improving my activity level to the point where I feel better outside getting sunlight, grounding, functioning with more joy and happiness. So I feel like
Mm,
I'm aging adventurously. And I call it aging beautifully and adventurously for longevity because basically, when you get outside and you have new experiences and you get out and you utilize your body and your brain at the same time, you grow your hippocampus. But if
mhm.
you stay home stuck and don't do anything and worry about what's going on at home and never leave your home or even your environment, you actually shrink your brain. And so
Wow.
then you end up in more of a brain dysfunction because we are not utilizing our brain and our body the way we were designed. It's going to just get sick
Yeah,
and
it's
become,
deteriorate
what you
basically.
don't
Yeah.
use won't work.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And so let's pull age through here because
Okay.
I know that your focus is women over 50. So, what is it about turning 50 that creates additional complications to our metabolism and to our diet and to our health and really our wellness? And when we talk about living, we really do sometimes have an impact because of our diet. So, what is it about that age that really creates additional complexity?
Yeah, so when we enter into menopause, what's happening is we have low estrogen levels. Estrogen is actually a very powerful hormone and is so many, I think just about every receptor in the human body has a receptor for estrogen. And it does a lot of things to make us feel young, youthful, and energetic and actually have our brain functioning. So when we're low on estrogen, all of a sudden we are not making it. And so what our body does is our adrenals have to make our estrogen for us. However, by the time we hit 50, we've raised kids, we've done all the things, our cortisol levels have been too elevated, we burn our adrenals out, and we're just exhausted. And so it's harder for the body to actually do what it needs to do because there's less estrogen in the body. And the
Mhm.
other side of that is we've been insulin resistant for so many years that we're in a pre-diabetic state. And then that usually takes 10 to 20 years to develop a disease. And
Does.
so what's
Yeah.
happening is we are becoming slowing down even more. Our blood sugar levels are still increasing. We're starting to store more fat around the middle, which is the visceral fat as well.
Mm,
And
I
it's
know
just
that.
kind of like the more, that's why we want to take the carbs down so that we can get that under control. Because when that's happening, it puts us in a disease state. And that's why so many people think that aging is a disease process
Mhm.
because of what's happening with the low, with blood sugar
Mm,
dysregulation, having insulin resistance. And as we get into menopause, that all just kind of blooms because there
mhm.
is less estrogen in our body and we're just tired. We become more
Wow.
tired, we become less active. And it's because of higher blood sugar levels in the body. And that's why I work with a holistic low carb lifestyle management for my clients and for myself, because the whole idea is to get insulin resistance to reset and to reduce by
Mhm.
lowering the blood sugar, by lowering your carbohydrates to get them low enough so that you can lower your blood sugar. And when you do all of that, you can reset your metabolism and get your energy back. And so then menopause can be easy at that point, not hard. But if you
Yeah.
start focusing on it before you hit 50, it becomes much easier. And then a lot of it is because of the lack of knowledge. So like,
Mhm.
if you're trying to eat a low salt diet, you're going to hold on to water and have more edema. And so if
Right.
and if you've got, and fatty liver is just accumulating. The pancreas is accumulating more fat and slowing down. So while all of that is happening because of too much carbohydrates in our body. And so when you get that under control and find your carb count, you can really drop 20 pounds easily and revert and actually beat diabetes naturally just by managing your carbs. And the problem is, again, with the menopause is because low estrogen just escalates everything.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You use the phrase insulin resistance, and I hear that buzzword all the time. Tell us
Yeah,
what insulin resistance is. It sounds like a state of prediabetes, but I'm
it
not really
is.
actually sure what it
It is a state of prediabetes. If you follow it, is the precursor to prediabetes. If any woman has had PMS, PCOS, PCOS, what that is, and it's normally happens when you're younger. By the time you hit menopause, it's just not there because you're not making any hormones. So it's when you're younger. I had it in my mid 30s, and it is polycystic fibrosis syndrome.
polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ovarians. Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you very much. What that does is it just means that your estrogen levels had become so high that they're actually aromatized into testosterone. So you end up
Mm.
with higher testosterone in the body and you
Hmm.
become more infertile and you actually don't have enough progesterone. So it's a big
Hmm.
hormonal imbalance that's happening in the body. And that is an insulin resistant state. And it is actually a pre-diabetic state. So you could be pre-diabetic your whole life and not even know it. And by the time you get to 50, you just burned out and your body is just becoming letting disease is starting to set in more, and then prediabetes becomes diabetes, and that's why people are getting sick in their 50s and 60s because that's been ongoing for the last 20 years. And that's why I always focus on not just, it's a weight loss and diabetes solution, because once you reset your metabolism, you take care of both. You can have permanent weight loss and not have to worry about having diabetes. And then dementia sets in after diabetes. So we don't want any of that to happen. Or it can happen anywhere along the line and anything can pop up and we just want to turn it off. That's how I
Yeah.
look at it. You can turn it off with diet by taking your carbs down low. And I think it's just something people need to know, that it's not just, oh, I can't eat this food, but why do you want to do this? And if you realize that you could actually turn off your disease process by going low carb, then it makes more sense to make and follow those food bridges and actually try to make your body healthier when you know
Mhm.
this knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point because I think a lot of lifestyle choices that we make are mindset driven,
It
right?
is.
So, what I
Yeah.
hear you saying is you need to also not just reset your diet, but reset your mindset. The food that you're taking in, because I think a lot of people come to the table, really, so to speak, with this mindset that's like, I deserve to eat this cookie. I worked hard today, or I've earned this fill in the blank, this piece of pie, this chocolate cake, because we go so hard, we go so fast, we are depleting ourselves every day. And so we tend to reach for those quick fixes or those sweet things because we feel like we've earned it because of the hard work that we put in. But what you're saying is that we need to shift our mindset and think, this piece of chocolate cake can actually have a long term impact on my overall health and well-being and enjoying my life in my later years or enjoying my family. And so it's really about thinking differently about the food that you put in your body and thinking like, I've earned a healthy life. I want to be known for earning this healthy lifestyle. Like, I want to, live a long and productive life. And so therefore I will not eat this cake because I know how the impact it's going to have.
Yeah, and that's an interesting story right there, because I was working with a client that was kind of listening to the glucose goddess, who's a wonderful person, but she's not obese. And so she doesn't have the obesity issue and she's not, in her 50s. And so there's some things that she could do that we're not going to be able to do. And so I was talking to this client and she's like, well, if I'm fast, I can have a little piece of cake afterwards. And I'm like,
Mm,
well, that could work if your gut health was healthy, but I'm looking at your labs and I'm seeing this inflammation in your labs. And this lab is showing you have detoxification issues, high beta glucuronidase, blocking enzyme detoxification in your gut, and you have high blood pressure and have inflammation. So if that's all happening and you eat that cake, sure, you
right.
might have been fasting and it's not going to cause you to gain weight, but it's going to cause you to have 6 months of inflammation markers turned on in your body that you're not going to be able to clear. And so that's how I look at food, as food as information to the body.
Yeah.
So
That
that's a
is
very
fascinating.
important thing to think about. And there was another thing I was going to address, but I think I lost track. Oh, the other thing is the reason why we crave food when we get home is we're tired, we're exhausted, we haven't
Mm,
been eating all day. And so we want to eat something that's going to turn off the stress right away. And so having that sugar and that dopamine hit is going to turn off the stress, or that glass of wine is going to turn off the stress at them in the moment,
love my glass
but
of
it
wine.
causes more stress later in the day. But what you can focus on if you're eating fat and you're intermittent fasting or doing all of your meals, all of your calories in your meal, and then
Mhm.
you come home and you have a good meal, but you could have a keto or low carb snack, you're going to feel satisfied and turn off your hunger response. When you are hungry, your ghrelin a hormone, just look at it as a gremlin. You have a
Right.
ghrelin hormone in your body, and you have leptin. Leptin is your safety hormone. Ghrelin is your hunger hormone. So that gremlin is turned on and it's saying, eat me, eat. I know, eat something. I'm hungry. You need to feed me. And the only way to turn it off is to not eat the foods that cause those cravings and making sure you're satiated with fat and protein.
Yeah.
And then you can turn up your leptin satiety hormone and turn off the ghrelin hormone. Wheat keeps the ghrelin hormone turned on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, is there other ever a time, because here's where I am today. Like we said in the beginning, I do sort of feel like I've come to a place where I've in some respects healed my thyroid. I feel I still do take my thyroid medications and I do that on a daily and regular basis. But what I've noticed lately is that I can tolerate carbohydrates maybe a little bit more than I ever could.
You reset your insulin resistance.
Yeah. So what I've noticed is like if my daughter was eating a bag of pretzels across the room and I looked at that bag of pretzels, I would feel sick. Like I couldn't even get close to the bag of pretzels. But today, like I might grab a couple of pretzels out of the bag and eat those and I feel fine. I've even ventured in like I know I said I hadn't had bread, but I went on a girls' weekend last weekend and I had a piece of sourdough bread. And honest to goodness, I really do not think I've eaten an entire piece of bread, maybe a nibble or a bite here and there in over 10 years. I'm telling you right now, Lori. So the fact that I actually ate this piece of sourdough bread and I felt okay afterward and I didn't feel bloated. I always have these reactions to it afterward. And I just am like, why did I eat that? I'm so angry at myself. So, is there a place in time when we can actually maybe add in a little bit more of those things that we desire, like the breads or the things, the carbs, because our body has flipped? There's a new tolerance for that. Is that
So
possible?
it sounds like you have reset your insulin sensitivity, and so you're probably not pre-diabetic, you're not overweight. So there may be a time where you can have a birthday cake or a piece of bread. And if you're not reacting to pain and inflammation, the one thing I would be concerned about with you because you have Hashimoto's is as long
Mhm.
as you have Hashimoto's, you're sensitive to wheat and you will
Yeah.
always be sensitive to wheat. And eating that piece of bread, you've turned on 6 months of inflammatory response in your body, even if you didn't notice it with your brain.
So, how does that work? Like when you say 6 months of
It turns on
response
an
to.
antibody response
Uh-huh.
and it heightened alert of autobot antibodies in the body are elevated. It might, for you, hopefully you don't have leaky gut, so it probably didn't get into your body overall. And so
Mhm.
that could be something that helped you not even feel better. Because I've got a couple of clients that just got off wheat, and one of the things they notice as soon as they eat it, they're almost immediately pain for 2 days, and so their bodies are still healing. And so since you didn't have any pain, it sounds like you probably don't have leaky gut and maybe it didn't have as much of a response. But one of the things Dr. Ben Hum talks about, and you can follow him on Instagram, Dr.
Mhm.
Ben F8. He's a functional medicine practitioner and he's helping people reduce autoimmune risk in their body. And he states it every single time. He says, like, if you have wheat, you're setting off and this is not just him, it's coming from a lot of people who study nutrition and gluten in the diet. And if you are sensitive to having a reaction to wheat and you have something like Hashimoto's, wheat will cause inflammation ongoing in your body every time you eat it.
Okay. Thank you. I will
It's a,
not eat
you know, and
bread. I know
I
it's
won't.
so crazy though.
And so maybe getting a food sensitivity test will help give you more information
Yep.
too. And a lot of the times people like to be able to see that, yeah, okay, I am reacting to this and know the difference. And then there's even ones that like the wheat zoomer is used to actually see how you're reacting and which proteins you're reacting to with wheat, because there's many proteins. And they even, dairy actually mimics wheat. So if you're in a gluten-free diet, but you're still eating dairy, it could be that your body is still reacting to the dairy proteins, which mimic the wheat proteins. And the same thing with corn. So like I have that trifecta. I'm sensitive, red sensitive to wheat and dairy. And so I got hit with the corn too.
Mm,
And so I don't do either three of those until living on a low carb diet takes a lot of these foods out so that you can actually reset your immune system and reset your autoimmunity process and correct the bacteria in your body. So I know a lot of the times this can seem like a lot. And that's why if you download my belly fat mini course that comes with this podcast and then
mm,
the workbook as well, it's a lot of steps to just getting started, focusing on hydration, focusing on digestion, focusing on mineralizing your body, and then just lowering your carbohydrates. And there's a cheat sheet that comes with it. And you could just put it on your refrigerator and kind of just check things off because, it's not done in a day. I've been doing this, I've been on this specific plan or lifestyle for aging adventurously so I
yes.
could have longevity for at least 8 to 9 years. And so I'm ahead of where you are if you're just getting started. That's why I wish I could tell people what I know now that I didn't know when I was 35 was
Yeah.
if you just make it all low carb, get yourself a keto cookbook, everything's going to be better in your body. And then 10 years from now, you will actually have better life like you're doing. You're dialing it all in. You're looking for your solutions. And there was just like one piece of the puzzle that I pull out of my brain that I could give to somebody like, this could be a solution. Try this, figure that out. It is something that we have to do and take care of it with ourselves at home in our own kitchens because the medical system is a sick care system and they're going to be really good at patching you up, stopping the blood from flowing, or helping you at the point if you become too critical and you didn't take care of it soon enough. That's
Yeah.
what they're there for. But
But
they're
don't get
not
to
going
that
to
point.
actually hold your hand and
Yeah.
give you the health nutrition you need and the knowledge to be strong and empowered and inspired to use low carb nutrition to correct your brain and your body
That's right.
so
And
you can have
if
permanent weight loss.
exactly. And if our listener is looking for someone to hold their hand, Lori, how can they get in touch with you? And I know you also mentioned a recipe book as well that they can access because get that low carb cookbook because that's going to help you kickstart that bridge, ladies.
Yeah, and those recipes are ones I started with. I am more ketovore these days, but still for the holidays. Like I said, Irish soda bread, I'll fix that for St. Patrick's
Yes,
Day
for the
table.
soda bread recipe.
Yeah, so it's
Yep, get rid of that soda. What do you call it? The
wheat.
sourdough. Go for the soda bread.
You can make a lot of things out of coconut flour, and there is even a biscuit recipe with coconut flour, and I have the Irish soda bread recipe in there, and you can make it into a flatbread. There's so many things that we could do, and you could find that on Baloo. That's LORIBALUE.com, and there's a button on the first page, and I also have a landing page for the book. Then you can check it out and see if you're interested. It's just $9.99, but it's going to change your life, and get it as a gift for somebody else. It's so exciting. You could find me on Instagram at Lori Blue Weight Loss. That has been my journey. I used to weigh 225 pounds. I'm down 100 pounds and
Wow.
just never give up. You can do this. Just follow the food bridge process, start low carb, and you need to come up with your why. You need your big why and your vision. And so my workbook has a little bit of that writing space there that's going to give you what you need to really think about it. January is coming up. If you need help implementing this, that's what I'm here for. It's just like, we could run the labs. Sure, it's an investment, but it's an investment in you to get the health that you want to have so you can dial in 10 to more 20 years of active living to live life more adventurously. This is the longevity factor. It's not going to come from a pill. It's
Yes.
going to come from the diet change that you get to create to recreate the body you want to live in. So you can feel good in your body and your brain can be functional and you can feel
Amen.
happy. Yeah,
Love it.
right? And so
Yes.
menopause could be easy once you dial all, if you do this sooner than later, you're just going to be able to tune into who you want to be.
I love that, Lori.
I mean,
Well,
I
this
got dressed today. I put these cute little pants on,
Yeah.
and I mean, they're just, I don't know if you can see them here, but they're just
Oh,
these
they are cute. Yes,
pants.
I love them. They look comfy.
I could get dressed without worrying about being too fat and clothes not fitting. And so that
Yeah.
was always a problem. I threw out bags of clothes out of my closet. I had a closet
Oh,
audit,
awesome.
and I threw everything out, and everything's small now. It's medium to small, and I can get dressed and not worried about being overweight or having to think that my clothes are going to get too big because I've solved my weight loss problem
Yeah, love that.
by working on correcting my health. And so you have to get healthy to lose the weight. So let a low carb diet work and just eat what you want, but make it low carb. That's so easy, really. It's really not that hard. I'm so grateful I found this solution because it saved my life and it'll save yours too.
And we're so grateful you were able to be here with us today, Lori. Thank you so much for your wisdom.
Yeah, it was an honor to be here to share all of this and to meet you and to support your audience. Because, you could DIY it. Just hang out with me on YouTube. I'm on YouTube too. You get the free stuff.
Do it, girls.
Yep, you got it. You've got it, girls.
Thanks, Lori.
You're welcome.